everyone. Hello, welcome back to the SERA ECR podcast. This time I'm with my co-conveners Chantelle and Xin Xu from University of Oxford. This is our third episode of Conversations with Scholars, but it's the first time we're doing it in a podcast mode. The previous two were all in person and uploaded to the SERA ECR YouTube channel. And today it's our first podcast with a scholar. Xin Xu, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be joining this conversation. I'm Xin Xu. I'm a Departmental Lecturer in Higher and Tertiary Education at the Education Department at Oxford. Any other information I should provide at this point, or would that be
sufficient? Talk more about it, don't worry. And Chantelle, would you like to introduce you?
Yeah, so I've seen some of these before. I've been part of them. So I'm another co-convener, and it's really good to be here, being part of another conversation with the scholars. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So our first podcast, three of us together, and we have prepared a starter question for Xin. How many languages do you speak? What are the languages that you speak fluently for academic exchange?
Thank you for the starter question. And I should mention that the other starter questions you prepared are also really creative and interesting. I hope some other speakers and scholars you'll be talking with will answer those. So in terms of languages, I speak English as the language we're communicating with now. And I also speak Mandarin Chinese, which is my mother tongue and first language. And in addition to that, I also speak a little bit German, which is the second foreign language I learned during college life. And I also spent 1 year in Heidelberg University during my college life as well. I started a little bit of Japanese language during my doctorate, but in terms of working languages, I work with English and Chinese languages. And by the way, because sometimes it's a bit difficult for people there might be repetitive names when Chinese names are converted into English. So my name in Chinese are Xu Xin, Xu as Yanwu Xu, and Xin means heart and mind.
Yeah, because in Chinese we say surname first, then the given name. But here it's the other way around.
Yes.
Yeah. And I promise I didn't plan this. I didn't know the languages you speak, but very interesting. The previous two interviewees also chose this question. And the first person, Hospista, speaks Dutch, English, and a little bit of German. The second person speaks this German. Speaks English and German, and you speak German as well. I didn't plan this, but it's very interesting to see the kind of unintentional connections.
Yes, it's such a small world as well. So perhaps the next speakers will be a German speaker that will be you'll be talking with.
Yeah. I've been learning German for 260 days, so a little bit making progress. Yeah. But it's quite interesting, like all these languages you've been learning, and you see kind of but still, like everyone, the common language we all speak is English, and the way we could communicate in this podcast of this also is English. Like it's quite interesting to see this, and quite also interesting to see what are the other languages existing and could be developed. That's good. So, Chantelle, do you want to ask the main question? I'm going to throw at our speaker.
So your first main question is, if you could go back to your first few years as a doctorate researcher, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I actually, when I first had a look of it, I had several questions for you. So in terms of going back to my first year, will I have the same memories that I have now? Or will it be like a completely fresh start?
I think maybe if you have the knowledge you have now and the memories you have now, then would you do anything differently?
Yeah. So And also because my doctorate started like quite a few years ago, if we're talking about returning to 2015, the first thing I might do with my current memory is to warn the world about the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, that would be very generous.
Yeah, but I mean, people may not believe in me, but that. But anyway, I guess we're not asking about this question. So, in an imaginary world, when I could redo my doctorate, I probably wouldn't change many things or wouldn't change major things because I believe that every step that I've taken, every decision I've made, every people I've worked with or communicated with, they were all important and valuable in different ways. So I wouldn't really regret anything that I've done or not done or redoing anything major. But if I had a chance, I would probably say to myself, like 10 years ago, that no worry, take it easy. So there were a couple of things and a couple of times when I can still remember I was so stressed out for things that I can't remember now. So I can only remember that I was super nervous and busy and tired and stressed, but I cannot remember why exactly. So what are the things I was worrying about? So that's the thing I think I would change if I had a chance.
I think that's a good piece of advice. I think, especially at the beginning, you worry about all these small, insignificant things, but at the time, they seem so huge in your decision, and you think, what if I make the wrong choice? But I'm quite similar to you. Like the choices you make get you to the position you're in. So have faith in yourself. You know that you're going to make the right choices, and it will take you down a path in life that's meant for you anyway. So that's a really nice way of thinking about it.
And I think it's also quite interesting because I want Chen to bring in like what you are studying is also higher education, right? It kind of helps you now with your knowledge you see in all of this, like actually don't need to be that stressed with this. So yes, other kind of like this is the journey of higher education with reflection and with the way to flourish in all of this. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your PhD and your research as well?
Yes, absolutely. So my research is around higher education or tertiary education in general, and my doctoral research topic was about the internationalization and evaluation of humanities and social sciences research in the context of Chinese higher education. So for that, I did analysis of policy documents around the topic, interviews with key stakeholders and scholars in the field of humanity and social sciences from different institutions in China and also journal editors. I also did a bit of a bibliometric mapping of the publications. But then since my doctorate, I've developed my research themes into broader strands, scope. So at the moment, my research has mainly, I think, 2 or 3 strands. One is continuing the research about higher education and research policies nationally and internationally. And second is about the issues of global and international higher education that include the internationalization, globalization, international student and academic mobility, international collaborations, etc. And also another strand I'm working on is about the research on research. So I research cultures, research practices, research evaluation, etc. Yes, another one that I'm currently also actively engaging with is about the intersectional inequalities and injustice in tertiary education and research, and that include different facets and different dimensions. So that's an area I'm also exploring and developing.
Yeah, very interesting. I think in Xing and Xing, we met at the CGHE conference, right? That well, you were also engaging with them. They were doing the research on the public good role of global higher education. How long have you been engaged with them?
So for that project, I was not a project member, but I'm a member of the CGHE, Center for Global Higher Education. Under the Center for Global Higher Education, we have a variety of projects. So I did not work with the public good project, but I was interested in the research while I was there. And also I've been working on another CG project, which is called Research on Research. And in that project, we've been exploring the different research structures, evaluation frameworks, cultures, in 6 selected case systems around the world, as well as internationally. And then we've been also exploring the value of research, the functions of research, and what do people mean by research and researchers through the process, through the project. We are in the final stage of the project at the moment. Actually, we just finished a webinar series, so CG webinar series on research today. So can I quickly plug in the info? So if people watching this or listening
of course,
to this in research on research, you can search for CG, so CGHE website, Center for Global Higher Education, and you'll be able to find the recordings.
We'll put that link as well.
On YouTube and on the website. Thank you.
We'll link that to YouTube and also put it on the SERA ECR channel so that people could lead people to take a look at it. Because I think it's quite interesting for the kind of like this research projects, kind of researching what is research, right? Who has a right to say this is research? And whether research is valued more in certain kind of aspects of this. It's quite interesting. I'm very looking forward to knowing more about it, and I'm glad that we just chip in on the same day, so you have very fresh memory of this. And so the second main question from us, the SERA ECR network, is: if you wake up tomorrow and you notice that you just got your doctorate degree, would you go on the same route to today, or you develop a different route for your career?
I think the answer will be quite similar. So although I've had like different options that I considered, upon graduation or before, actually well before that, right? Because we think about those issues while doing the doctorate. But then I think all the decisions I've made had a reason. So I will not re-choose the road that I've gone through myself. But if there are other people who are like graduating and then thinking about taking similar pathways, etc., then maybe I would suggest to them that each person's case is different. Because I understand that when I was a doctorate researcher, I've also learned about different stories, about different people's career trajectories, and all are really different but inspiring. But then through the process, I learned that each person's pathway is different. So there's no way of really following others' pathways, because different people have different conditions.
I think so. It just recalls to me in a way when I was having the Faculty of Social Science doctoral conference in 2022, I invited one of the professors, also from CGHE Center, and she was talking about like the post-PhD trajectories. There are actually a lot more kind of like possibilities also outside academia. Of course, it's easy. It's okay to stay in academia. It's important to know that you have all these options. And the reason we have stories with scholars and conversations is not about saying like the route they go is the route you need to go. It's about reminding you there are loads of ways. And like CGHE, I think you also have research projects on about like post-PhD trajectories and all of this. And it's important to know there are these options and see what's the difficulties and challenges people having gone through and then learn from it, rather than reinventing the wheel so you're just by yourself.
No, on you go. It's just agreeing with you. It's good to see the variety, I think, isn't it? And sometimes you don't plan things either. Sometimes we can have an idea in our head about where we want to be in the future, and then something we haven't thought about maybe comes up, which is it's always good to keep an open mind too.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with both of you. And also I think there may be a need for us who are in academia in general to rethink about the different options and the way that we frame them. Because nowadays still, I think some people may be having this perception that having a doctorate means needing to stay in academia. Otherwise, it will be a failure, or otherwise, it will be considered as something really not as positive. But I don't think that's the case.
Yes.
People make different choices and decisions, and staying in or outside academia are, you know, as long as it's meaningful and valuable things you're doing, it's equal. And also in academic trajectories, there are also different positions, different institutions people will be working in, different types of jobs people will be doing. And I think we might also need to rethink like how we term as academic success in the academic careers, because there are different types of success, not just
Publication.
more traditional
Publication going after ladder. No, there are more of that. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting in a way to see you talk about it, and for myself to think, because I just finished the PhD and going to start my postdoc. So postdoc I'm doing, although it sounds like, oh, a postdoc academic route, but this one's called Impact Accelerator account. And from the very beginning of applying to this scholarship, they said very clearly they wanted me to have impact outside academia. I like, so you don't want me to connect with more scholars? Like, no, talk to the people who is outside academia, who would be interested in this, either they're policymakers, practitioners, or communities. Try to see if you could have any collaborations with them. And I then had a call with a friend who's working in finance, and I talked to them like, oh, about this climate change education, of this, and like about young people. Like, not just young people need it, for the people who are thinking about where they should put their pension, their investment. They need to know where they could go, their money could go to invest in this kind of green business, instead of like causing more climate emergency, climate challenge. They need that climate upskilling as well. Like, wow, very true. I shouldn't just think like, oh, this thing is just within school. Education is not just schooling. And to know more about that, for the audience, you could listen to more videos from our previous interviewees. Talked quite a lot about what is education in the German context. I guess Xin also know about it because you studied there. So education is a much, much more broader thing than schooling. Yeah. Okay. Over to you, Chantelle. The third question.
So this one is quite a nice question too. So when you look back on your days as an early career researcher, are there any lessons that you've learned along the way and that you would like to share with early career researchers today?
Yes, there are so many lessons learned throughout the way. And I would like to share as many as possible. It's just I cannot remember all of them at this point. And also another thing is that for some of the lessons, I think I wouldn't have learned it without experiencing them myself, even if I've listened to other people talking about them. So this is another thing, the real life can teach us a lot. But in terms of some of the big things that will be helpful. So one of them is that is related to what we called about like being success, etc. I think academia is tend to have this culture of competitions, and it can be very intense for many people. And as earlier career researchers, it can be people can feel even more stressed and even facing more competitions. But I really hope that people will be seeing academia from another length, rather than competing with each other, but seeking possible common grounds and seeking possible opportunities to collaborate and lift each other up as a community. So that would benefit everyone rather than trying to compete with each other and then turning the environment into a highly competitive, exhaustive, and even toxic way for everyone. So that's one thing, very generic. And another thing is that for early career researchers, I think for everyone really, it's also important to be able to know your boundary and to be able to set clear boundaries and communicate that clearly. Because, and I say this especially for early career researchers or for other people from other groups, like who may be feeling more marginalized, who may be feeling more pressures under existing power structures within the higher education institutions or research environments. So there are things that people can say no to without explaining. So that's another thing. And then a third thing is that doing research hopefully will be something that you chose because it's fun, because you found value and meaning in it, because you enjoy doing it. Otherwise, there are loads of options of career choices. Sorry, there's okay. Yes, so that's another thing. And also perhaps the final thing is that I wouldn't say it's work-life balance, but kind of it's important to have like work-life harmony for people, because there are endless number of papers we can write, books we can read, and knowledge we can learn, but then we only have one life. And also got families and friends and other people who value us and who are important to us. And yes, and I love myself. I hope people also love themselves as well. So that's another thing to remember, because there are so many stories of people in academia and really burnt out and really missing a lot of things because of the work. And I know people make different choices, and I know people have the freedom to make their choices, but it's perhaps also important to think about the work and life and the kind of the relationship between them.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice to hear you talk about that. At the University of Glasgow, PhD students a bit further on can talk to those who are just joining, and it's like a symposium thing. So I done a talk there all about this work-life balance, or research life balance, I suppose. In your sort of PhD journey, you're asked to do conferences, and maybe you have a part-time job, maybe you have a family. There's so many things that are kind of expected of you to add to your CV to make you stand out from the crowd. But the more you do that, the less you become you. So it's really about, am I doing this because someone's told me I need to do this, or because I want to do it and it's enjoyable? I totally agree that your research has to be something you enjoy. Otherwise, what's the point? And that's the same for everything you do. Every conference should be because you enjoy it and you want to be there and you want to meet new people, not just to tick a box off. So I think that's really, really nice lessons to have learned. Yeah. But you also go through burnout. We'll sit here and we'll say, don't burn yourself out. But you've also got to experience a bit of burnout as well, just to learn.
Yeah, but like mental health issues are really serious problems in the research communities, and I'm really glad that we're now seeing more research about it, seeing more discussions and open discussions about them. So that's a good sign of people not stigmatizing the issues anymore. Hopefully, not anymore.
Definitely.
I think so. Like I think it's sometimes it's all like you before you mentioning about having the boundaries and all of this. I think I don't know if it's a gender thing or not because I didn't do any research on this. But I see a lot of like female researchers find it very difficult to say no, including myself. Very difficult to say no. But the thing is, we cannot finish everything. To a certain way, you have to say no so that they will find someone else. Just say no if you feel like you cannot take more. It's okay to say it, like to gradually have the boundary because like you were talking about with the life and all of this. Because myself, I had experience of another university and then I transferred to Sterling. I could see with this experience of me to different sides, here what I'm doing is what I want to do. I strive to a certain extent. Everything I want to do, I make it happen and people support me to make it happen. It is so kind of like a free experience what I want to do. Yes, and when I make it like Shing said, it's collaborating with people, getting it to do everyone. It's not just about competition. Like you, even though you will be the most brilliant, most smartest person in the world, you wouldn't finish every work in academia. You wouldn't be able to do that. Even AI couldn't do that. So you need to collaborate with people, have conversations with people, talk about the journal papers. The journal paper is not just you show how brilliant your idea is knowing this is being a research ongoing and you are contributing to the existing conversation and saying like, I know this has been discussed, but what about this point? And my research contributes into this point. That's what is going on. So it has to be collaborative. Yeah. So I
Yes.
really enjoyed the advice you gave to the early career researchers and all this. And can I ask the next question? Is about are there anyone, if you can recall, who has or have influenced you into becoming you today in this field of research? What have they done to you?
Yes. So firstly, I wouldn't say what I said was advice. It was more sharing.
Yeah,
And
showing the experiences. Yeah.
yes. And then I would also like to add quickly examples from the existing research. There are researchers who are women researchers or who are from minority ethnic groups and who are from other marginalized categories like who have disabilities, etc., or found to have been shouldering more invisible labors and having emotional labors as well in working in academia and taking more teaching responsibilities, taking more administrative responsibilities, and also sharing with students who are from those, again, disadvantaged and marginalized communities. More responsibilities with students in that sense. Sorry, so back to your question. I was really privileged and fortunate to be able to work with a group of supervisors and mentors and collaborators who've been really excellent scholars, not just intellectually, but also as a person. So, I mean, there are lots of smart people, but for people who are smart and kind and supportive of the younger generations, those are really rare perhaps not as rare, but really valuable scholars. So there's so there's so many, so I wouldn't name people here, but I just want to have a huge general shout out to my supervisors, previous supervisors and mentors, because at each stage I've had mentors, and also the people I've worked with, the collaborators, and also my students that I supervise and work with. They also teach me new things, teach me new knowledge and new ways of seeing the world. So I'm really grateful to be able to work and engage with the really wide range of excellent human beings.
I really like this answer because it kind of like recalls kind of like group of people, kind of it's passing on, right? Like what your supervisor, like you said, they're not only just intelligent and brilliant in their research, they are kind person. They chose to be kind to the younger generations instead of exploiting them like some of the people do, but they chose to be kind. And this kindness pass on to you when you are collaborating with people and to you and your students. And they kind of like, it's a kind of like the psychology, they kind of have like, it's a positive loop, right? Positive kind of like feedback keep going on. Although you see like, before we're talking about the art part of academia is quite cruel, quite kind of like difficult for define success and kind of like centralizing the power of this. But there are also people choose to act differently, choose to take care of the community, choose to support younger scholars to going through the journey and seeing that the younger scholars not just saying thank you to them, but also doing the same for their students, for their collaborators. This is something I think have done. They chose to be kind, and that's what you have chosen to do as well.
Yeah.
So over, Chantelle.
Yeah. So nowadays, when you're writing and you're editing things, what do you think is like a good habit to have that keeps you going?
Mhm. So in terms of writing, so academic writing, I know this is a really important topic. And then I've developed some of the habits that I'm still using. One is that I think I've partly conquered my perfectionism in in the in the first drafts of the manuscripts, because I think when I first started academic writing, I was like trying to get everything perfect. When I'm writing even the first earliest drafts, I was like correcting every sentence and thinking about vocabulary and word choices and the logic and everything. But now I've developed into a habit of, I'll just write whatever I had in my mind. Then I know there will be time for proofreading and editing, and then my thinking will also change. So there may be things I would like to write more about when reflecting upon what I've written, and there will be like feedback from colleagues that I work with, and there will be like collaborators' input. So now I understand that the first draft is just a first draft. So that's the first thing. And then another thing is that as I grew from doing doctorate to my current roles, I realized there being less and less dedicated blocked time for writing. So when I was a doctoral researcher, I had the luxury of spending whole day just on writing. I mean, I also had breakfast and lunch and everything also go out, but then there are more time that are blocked. But nowadays time is more fragmented, so I'm kind of developing the ways of working with writing in fragmented timescales and trying to have arrange blocked time for myself for academic writing. So that's another thing. And then the third thing, maybe it's not as important, but I want to mention it because as I mentioned, my first language is Mandarin. So English is my second language that I've learned. So I majored in English language in college. So I learned about like academic writing in English and everything. But still, there are a lot of things that I felt was like, so I'm not a first language speaker in English. So there are things that I will never ever naturally write or learn about. And I've getting accustomed to it now. So at the beginning, I was like, oh, so why am I always confusing between some of the pronouns? Why is it like something I had to proofread every time after writing those phrases? But then, so that was, through my doctorate. But then through the process, I was like, anyway, I also make mistakes with my Chinese academic writing. So that happens. We're all human beings. We're not perfect. We're not academic writing robots who may also make mistakes. So I'll just live with it. That's not something that's bothering me anymore. But because I also work with students whose first language is not English and who may be a bit concerned about the language and maybe even questioning their language skills. But I mean, every people who've been saying to me that, oh, my English language is not as good, their English language is very good. it's just I don't hope that people will be embracing this idea of, only those people who are speaking English as the first language will be writing perfect English articles or publications. And then I also do not like the idea of any sense of privileges or superiorities in terms of the language in the academic writing, because I believe that what's important for academic writing is not just about language use, but more about the contents, the meanings, the information to be conveyed. So that's something I hope may be helpful for people who may be facing the similar situations.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice point. English is my first language, and I get it wrong all the time. So it's not like that's something that we should hold against people. I totally agree with you. I think if you get the concepts and the ideas across in a way that others can understand, I don't understand why it matters if you've used a colon or a semicolon, or if you're getting the message across, then I think that's what's important. I did have a sort of segue question. So I know both of you are international students as well. So I'm interested in the writing process. Do you ever write in your home language first and then translate, or do you always just go into academic mode and write in English?
That's a really good question and really interesting one. So I'll make a start, and Hermione, you please come in. So for me, I write. So I write in English when I'm writing English language articles, and I write in Chinese when I'm writing Chinese language articles, because I found it even more difficult to translate what I've written into another language, and also because the different Chinese language publications articles have different format, different flows of the logics, and different flows of the structure than the English ones. So I found it actually easier to use the language first. But then I also know that some of my students may be doing Chinese first, then translating, or vice versa. So I think that might be helpful for some people. So some people might be more used to that way of writing. I don't know about you, Miney.
So in my case, I didn't study English in college, so my background is geography, but I did have a very good score when I was studying in school in English. So I went through to study, self-taught myself to become interpreter. So I do have kind of a lot of translation going on in the very beginning when I was doing PhD in another kind of university. So I could see, even now these days when I look back, I could see that my logic, even though I write it in English, but my logic was very Chinese based, and also the way I was taught in writing English in China in school was you write long sentences, you make it very difficult to understand. But these days I've learned I need to make the message come through, like you said. I'm not trying to show off how much I master this language. I'm trying to convey the message, and it had to be clear, crystal clear, in a way that in the shortest sentence I could make, it comes through, and I need to do signposting of this. So all of these are the academic writing skills I've learned in English. And another thing is the term I use, I first learned them in English as well, and the readings and all of this, they were all in English. So I actually find it a bit easier when I write English, although it's not perfect English. But the difficulty then comes is like when I want to reach out to a wider community, not just the communities here internationally, like also back in China, since my study is actually about Shanghai, about geography teachers, although it's not just about them because they're theoretical development, but I want them also to understand what I'm trying to say. That's where at this moment I'm finding it a bit difficult to do, because now I have to do the translation to them because they didn't know any about all these terms in English. And so, but like returning to Chantelle's points, yes, I just do it in English and I read all of this and most of the things in English. But that in my study, and the slight difference is like when I had my interviews with teachers, it was all in Chinese. So that's the part I have to first do it all in Chinese, because that's the language teachers would feel free to express themselves. And then I translate everything into English and I color code them, and I kind of like made the first draft to communicate with my supervisors, and my supervisors actually helped me quite a lot with like, oh, this I can see what you mean in Chinese when you translate this, but this is actually not the term we use. Like there was one I still remember today that in Chinese we have quite a lot about 基地, so I translated as base. And my supervisor said, but here, when you talk about base, people think about basement. So I explained what this base means in my context. They're like, oh, actually, that means hub. Here is the term when this function as a hub. So like, okay, so we'll go with hub because I want the meaning to come through, not a direct translation. So although I didn't do any translation degree or English degree, but I feel like I'm learning quite a lot about what it means by free translation, because you want the meaning to come through. And so I always feel like before I was like, I'm never going to be as good as your English speakers. Now I'm like, yeah, I don't need to be because what I'm bringing is new. What I'm saying is something new. I'm creating new knowledges. And you couldn't do that because you didn't know that language. I know that language. I'm bridging the knowledge gap of it. So you should help me to building up instead of criticizing me, not saying the perfect so-called English grammar. There are a lot of ways helping you already. Last year, we invited Lily. So Lily Young came through and talked about academic writing and talked about how AI at these days could help you and like proofreading service of this. There are a lot of ways to help you, but what cannot be helped is this person's originality and the creativity of interpreting the data, understanding the world with the theory. And that's what's really cool to become an academic.
I totally agree. And there's so many things that are added through the cross-cultural dialogues and multilingual research. And there's so many things that can be lost in translation across different languages. And there are always something that I could not fully express in Chinese or in English when I was thinking about the other language. So I would also like to say that it'll be really helpful for people, actually everyone, to understand and learn more about the actual burdens. Not sometimes it's burden, sometimes it's actual work in a neutral term that researchers who are navigating multilingual cross-cultural worlds are experiencing. So really can be challenging but also rewarding experiences.
As time ticks, I'm going to ask the next question. What have you been reading recently that you find thought-provoking and or very eye-opening? Are you okay to share with us at least one of your reading recently?
Yes, there's so many. There's so many, but when I first saw this, I was like, maybe I could introduce this one. Actually, you might have read about this. So it's a book about it's called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Have you encountered this book before?
I've heard of it. I've not read it myself.
Yes, it's a good book. It's a good book. It's not like the more traditional academic book because I've been reading a lot about decolonization issues, racial injustice issues, and such and such. But this one is its style of writing is very approachable, and I think a wide range of readers will be able to easily engage with issues of racial inequalities and injustice, particularly in the England, UK general context about this. So I thought it might be a book that I can share for this audience.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, we will put that on in the kind of podcast with the link to that book for have people to understand a little bit more about it. It's the reason we're talking about the reading, like we said, we didn't specify which kind of reading is. I would say like it's not just academic books, academic journals are readings. Everything that you could read, like even if you say I'm reading a recent really good blog post, that's it. If you like, I'm reading a comic which you can, it is. It could be like academics don't just spend all our time reading the literature. We have loads of things we're interested in. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Chantelle?
Yeah. I agree on that point. Try and read for joy and for pleasure, not just for academics. I'll move on to the final main question, which is if you experience lows in your work, so those days where you just can't be bothered, how do you re-motivate yourself?
It's another good and important question that really relates back to what we've discussed about mental health issues and work-life harmony. So for me, I've had developed some of the strategies over the years. So one of the things is that I unplug from my work. So I take on leaves completely, and I let people know that I'm off email. So there's auto reply messages that I send out. So sorry, I'm off email and will be back at a certain time. But then I wouldn't be checking any messages. So I don't have. So on my phone, this may sound a bit weird, but on my phone I don't have my work email. So that I don't get push messages every now and then on my phone, but I do get it from my computers because I had those messages, but I had those for quite a few years during my doctorate, and then at the first years of my postdoctoral research, and I found it. The messages just increased, and I couldn't really let myself to be alerted of all the things that are popping up and up every minute. So not every minute I'm extracting, and so it's not it's not every minute, but I just felt I need a break. So that's one thing. So I unplug myself. So when I unplug myself, what did I do? So I do things that I found enjoyable, like reading books, or like going out into nature, or travel somewhere, or having fun with friends, and or catching up with families, etc. So those, I know that different people have different ways of enjoying life in general. So that's one thing. And another thing is that it'll be really helpful to have a support network so that people do not feel you're alone in all of this or shouldering all of this altogether. So it will be really important to develop such a network. For some people, it can be really small with only intimate and close people. For some people, it can be really large. And then for some people, it will need to be like in-person contacts. For some people, it can be like online conversations, etc. So regardless of the format, to have a support network. And another thing is that to be kind to ourselves. So we talk about how we can be kind to others and to each other, but another important thing is that we should also treat ourselves with kindness, and do not, and feel that we can rest, we cannot succeed in something, we can not to finish this writing task today. We can take a break. So allow ourselves for the things that we're entitled to. So that's perhaps another thing.
Those are really nice messages. It's all about self-care. And if you aren't looking after yourself, you'll never be motivated to do anything. So, yeah, having that support, knowing that we're not superheroes, we can't just keep powering on. And like you say, just having someone else to chat to, which is great to hear everyone else in this community saying. So, yeah, allow yourself a wee bit of me time. Like that.
It's
I think so, because I think either in academia or in other fields, people always say like yourself is the harshest critique of yourself. But sometimes like don't do things that you won't do to your best friend. How could you do that to yourself? Like it's not going to help if you're being so hard on yourself. You're going to burn out, or you like can have an emotional breakdown. You couldn't do anything. Just give yourself a little bit treat. I have a small kind of like little bag of myself. Sometimes I just put it there. So it's written something, treat yourself. And like every time I feel like I can't do anything, like treat yourself. Take a little break. Because I don't know if any of you have been to University of Stirling. So currently it's one of the most beautiful seasons in Stirling. And recently we have very good weather, surprisingly. And so I was like, treat yourself love, just go for a walk and come back, continue. You can do walk a little bit later if the weather is so good and just want to have it, enjoy it. And I think I've learned to kind of like I promised my supervisor that I'm going to send some amendments soon. Like I couldn't make it. There's more urgency going on. And I had a conversation with my another secondary supervisor as well, and she's like, "Yeah, there's a lot of things coming on. Just don't be so hard on yourself. There will be something you feel like more urgent than your work. You need to deal with that. Deal with that. Don't feel like work is the only priority in your life. Like then you need to have people to share your joy, share your moments, and it could be your friends, could be your family, could be someone else. It's not everything, not just about work. I think it's really good, very important message that we have you to come through.
Just gonna quickly add something. I also had like this not journal, but I keep things that I'm grateful for. So I record them. When I felt there's something that I'm grateful for and I'm happy for, then I keep notes of them. So I have them when I'm low. I look back at them and then felt so there are things that I'm grateful for. There are things that I value.
I think it's called gratitude journal from some. If it's but maybe not you do it every day. For me sometimes it's like I like loads of photos and videos and of this, so when I feel I just go back to my album and then look at the favorite one, and sometimes I just miss my friend and just click one of their face and then there will be a video of we have time together, like great. So it's about finding the ways that will be good for you to recharge yourself, remind you all the beautiful moments you have had. And that's why you are working for. It's not like just work for this specific thing. There are a wider world around us. Okay, this brings us to the connection with previous interviewees' questions. So we have 2 questions. And do you have a preference to go with? Which one do you want to go? We have one from Herbista. Yes, I would like to ask them their views on the state of educational research, the state of educational scholarship. We have another one from Carsten Kanklis. Yes, is education studies an independent academic discipline or a field of research?
Thank you. I think those 2 questions are important questions about educational research, and I will address them perhaps altogether. So, in terms of educational research, whether it's a discipline or it's a field, it's interesting because I just had a discussion with my project members earlier today about this, because we're doing a project about diverse contributions to educational research, and we came to a point when we're like, so what do we define as educational research? And we reached a point with agreement that educational research is more of a field rather than a discipline in the academic research community sense. So we understand that in the institutions, so in different universities, there are departments or faculties of education, and in that sense, and also we have very specific research guidelines or norms specific to educational research. In that sense, educational research can be seen as a discipline, has been established as a discipline of study. But then in addition to as a discipline, it's also a field that interact with other disciplines or other fields of knowledges very actively and constantly. So we talk about education. We're not just talking about educational research. We also talk about sociology of education, educational psychology, educational economics, or math education, science education, etc. So medical education. So there are wide range of overlapping, or not just overlapping, but intersectioning research and conversations and dialogues that go on with educational research. So that means there perhaps is not a unified, I know people may disagree, that there may not be a unified set of norms or cultures for educational research, or very specific singular set of agendas for educational research in general. But anyway, it's, or perhaps it's both a field and a discipline, if that makes more sense. Yeah, and in terms of the current status of educational research, so I guess it will depend on educational research in local context, in national context, or in international context in general. I don't have specific knowledge about other contexts other than the England, or broadly UK, but perhaps England, and also mainland China. And I would say that those two contexts, the educational research in those two contexts, have similarities and differences. Similarities are about the continuous development and growth of this field or of this discipline. However, both facing challenges when institutions are facing financial issues, facing challenges or critiques about the use of humanities and social sciences research, and facing challenges of, need to asserting the legitimacy of educational research from time to time. So those are some of the common challenges. And also there are some common agendas or common issues that I can see from both contexts, like the issues about educational equity, social justice are commonly shared, regardless of the subdisciplines, regardless of the national contexts. And also the issues about, other issues like students are all at the heart of the educational research in general, regardless of educational systems. But as said, there are different systematic institutional arrangements in those contexts. So different the educational research communities in those different contexts will differ in their agendas and also the methods. So it's arguably more general to be using empirical research methods in the more Western contexts or English language speaking context, whereas in the Chinese speaking educational research context, there are empirical research, but also you'll see a lot of publications that are without empirical data, but with reasoning and arguments. And then there are different values to those, or conceptual discussions. So there are different types of values for different types of research that happen. What else? So perhaps I will end here. Otherwise, I may
Yeah,
Go
it
on.
makes sense. It makes sense. And I think what you say reminds me quite a lot what KK was saying in German, like Bildung, and there's another term about education. But like in I forgot the other one. I'll look at the video again. But it's about saying like the word we are using currently in English as education, it means different things in different cultural contexts. And when the cultural context move here, like KK mentioned quite a lot, he sees himself as educationalist. But here, because this term is not being used, people would see him as education philosopher because he discussed the concepts instead of doing empirical studies. And they have to put him in a box, which is education philosopher, because there's no category called educationalist. And that's quite interesting. So that makes me wondering about her business questions like, of course, we're asking all the question at this moment and answering it all in English because of the audience and because of the kind of the wider people could reach to. But maybe it'd be interesting from linguistic perspective or to see like, what do they mean by education? Like, don't just ask the teachers, ask so-called students, ask the people who seem to have be involved in education but not actively kind of like what their attitudes about it. I recall recently I'm doing something with a public course called Imagine Education for All. So I have people who the first year in the university who are doing innovative education practice, who are doing who are just doing something else, but found this course, that would be interesting. Though, and I got very diverse views of it, but also found it so difficult for them to say what are we talking about this education? A lot of people, if you don't kind of like say, what do you mean about education? They assume we're talking about school education. But no, education is not just about school education. It could be related to higher education, could be related to museum education, like that, or could be related to medical education. There's or tea ceremony as a way of educating younger like tea masters to grow. So all this, like, it's quite broad. Yeah.
With self-cultivation, in the
Yeah.
sense of in the Chinese tradition, the
Yeah.
修身, so
Yeah.
cultivating yourself first as
Yeah.
part of the education.
Yes, so it's kind of like the growth that you are going through in your life course is also seen as education in the Chinese case if we translate here in English. But I don't know, is there anything else that you use to describe education in English to your knowledge, Chantelle?
I think, like you said, Hermione, I think if you said to someone education, they would probably define it as school. Probably. But through my own research talking about moral education, the teachers brought up that lifelong thing. So it starts even before you're born and then ends, well, when you end, I suppose. So I think it depends on what you're asking people they're being educated on. But yeah, I think probably the most connotation with the word is like an institution, which is very strange and needs to change, I think. Needs to change.
To change. I think we should come back to this question some other day. And now at this moment, we need to ask Xin to leave a question with us for the future interviewees.
Yes, so if we are continuing the line about educational research, I want to ask, what do you, as the next speaker, what do you find most exciting about the future of educational research?
Future of educational research. Thank you. Yeah, we'll go with this question. And thank you so much for coming to our first SERA ECR podcast on conversations with scholars. And we'll release it on our YouTube channel. And we're also putting the research the research, right? That's your project. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, and yeah, hope to keep in contact with you as well and see how you get on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be back.
Thank you so much.